G'day, this is Matt, and I'm just going to take a moment now to have a chat about the tidal wave that is heading our way and what it means for us as a church in this moment to prepare for it. Over the last week or so, most of us have been preoccupied with trying to work out how do we do a Sunday service, but in the scheme of things, our Sunday services are going to be our smallest challenge. Our biggest challenge is going to be, how do we care well? Not only how do we care for our people, but how do we care for our cities? How do we care for the people who are going to be in desperate need and who are going to be in a place where systems are overwhelmed, government is overwhelmed, and this is really the place that the church needs to be prepared to step in. Up front, I want to say we actually have to think quite differently, in my view, about how our pastoral care systems are now going to function. I think that there are at least 6 key things that we need to be thinking about in terms of pastoral care or care, and I do believe these need to be geared up to make sure they're covering everybody in our church, but also available to people beyond our church, and particularly for the people who are friends, family, and neighbours of our people. We need to be able to empower our people to provide care to their friends, family, and neighbours in this moment. How are we going to do that? Well, we want to, as a church on this coming Sunday, start to encourage our people to think about what can they bring to the table when it comes to care. And as I said, there are 6 core things. I'll go this way because this is where things are. I think right now in Australia we probably have 2 or 3 weeks to ensure that most of our older people particularly, but most people have access to internet of some sort, particularly internet to access to things like Skype or Zoom, or ways to maintain relationship face to face, because there is something qualitatively different about a face-to-face conversation than just a phone call. Not to diminish phone calls, because I think we actually need to be gearing up our phone tree in a moment, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But I do think if we have young people or people who are IT savvy, we actually need, each church now needs to develop a list of 2 or 3 or 4, or depending on the size of your church, 200 or 300 or 400 people who can go and sit with some of our older people and some of our more disadvantaged people and make sure they have access to the technology and the technology is working. And also those people need to be ready to provide feedback and tech support over the course of the next 18 months. IT is now a major pastoral need for the church. Secondarily, I've already mentioned this, but I do think each church needs to right now be talking to anybody who has been a healthcare professional, and if they are not already getting called back into the healthcare system, they need to, if as much as possible, we need to find a way to recruit them to be part of our pastoral care teams in our churches, to stand with our people as they have to care for parents and family, or if they themselves get sick. Our people and their friends, family, and neighbours are going to need help to navigate a complicated medical system. And they're going to need to know when is it urgent, when isn't it urgent. We're not asking for people to be doctors. We're not even asking for people to be nurses or to act in a qualified or act in any kind of official way, but to be friends who understand the healthcare system, understand enough that they can be trusted to be with people in this moment. I think a goal of this moment for the church should be that nobody in our city should feel alone in the challenges they interface. So I think we need to recruit teams of healthcare people. I think we also need to recruit teams of finance people who understand how finance works and are used to negotiating with banks and working with people to think through budgets. Particularly, we know thousands of people have already lost their jobs, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Many people in our church, in your church, in every church are going to lose their job. And that's going to have a direct impact on church finances, but our concern in this moment needs to primarily be about our people, and for them, they need to be caring about their friends, family and neighbours. And we need to give them the resource to be able to encourage and point their friends, family and neighbours in the direction of somebody who knows what they're talking about. So I think we need our people who can provide financial support, to be a friend in the face of financial challenges, and to very clearly tell people what the issues are, and to be with them in the questions. So we need a team of people with experience in the whole financial area. We need people who can provide practical support, people who can take people to shopping, or organise to get groceries for people, particularly when we've already seen how quickly the click and collect system falls apart. Chances are we can't rely on click and collect groceries for the worst bits of the pandemic crisis. So we need to make sure our people are getting what they need, but also if things really get bad and somebody gets a leak in their roof, or the dog is really, someone is housebound and their dog needs to get walked, we need to be able to provide some of that practical care. So we need to develop a team of people with practical skills and practical ability to come and give a hand, whether it's transport, whether it's getting groceries, whether it's fixing a leaking tap, whether it's taking a dog for a walk. We need people who can do that. We also need people who can cook. We need, most churches will have a commercial kitchen. We don't get rid of health and safety regulations, and we need to observe social distancing in all this, but we also need to be right now, in these next 2 or 3 weeks, building a bank of food and healthy food that is available for people if they hit a crisis and can't look after their own basic needs when it comes to food. So this 2 or 3 week period is an opportunity to be preparing a food bank. I think we need to be gearing up on the assumption that we're looking at minimum 6 months, worst case scenario 18 months of real challenge. And finally, I think we need our prayer teams. My hope and prayer is that every city in Australia can be covered by prayer chains of 24/7 prayer, where prayer needs are being filtered into those prayer networks, but also their sense of what God might be saying to the churches in the community is also filtering out to the churches, and that there is a continual prayer covering and dialogue with the creator of the universe as he leads us through this moment. All of this is needed. And so I don't know if you pick up what I'm saying, is I think we need to build new teams, and these kinds of things we can really partner as churches right across cities to do these things, so we can coordinate these efforts. This is not the central game though. The real central game is for each of our people. In the past, our church's primary pastoral care has been focused on our people. But we need to now understand that our people are centres of networks. They have friends, they have families, and we have been encouraging them to love their neighbours. And many of them have set up connections with neighbours. We need to continue to encourage our people to love their neighbours, connect with their neighbours, to connect with their friends and their family, and to be ready to do their best to support their friends, family and neighbours, but where it's out of their capacity to provide the care that is needed, that's where we have these teams ready to roll, and people who can give them a hand in coming alongside their neighbours, coming alongside their friends and family, and rather than the church being the source of care and the church programs being the source of care, it is our people who are loving their neighbours, their friends, their family. And if we can do this, if we can help our people now understand they have a responsibility to be caring for their friends, family and neighbours, and that we as a church have their back, and we're building teams of people that are ready to support them in providing this care, then the city will change. This is the job the church was always meant to be doing. And I do think that in many ways God has called us out of the safety of our nests. I've been keeping on coming back to Deuteronomy 32:11, the picture of the eagle teaching its baby to fly, kicking it out of its comfortable nest. I think this is how it's going to work. This, though, is going to take significant effort in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I hope and pray we don't end up anywhere near like what Italy has ended up. But if we get there, it's too late to try and mobilise and prepare our people to respond to needs, and it's too late to try and build these teams. These teams, people are wanting to know how to respond right now. These teams can be built very simply, very easily, and these don't have to be limited to a church. This is where small churches can work together. This is where we can work together as the church in the city. So whether it's the churches of the Eastern Shore of Hobart, or the churches of Burnie or Devonport, or the churches of Uzbekistan, this is the time where we can work together and forget about our labels. And the real game now, like we do need to, I think it's really important for us to keep innovating in how we do online church and church services and things. But as I said, that's not the main game right now. The main game is how do we mobilise our people to care? And in this moment, none of our people should feel as though they don't have something to contribute. Everybody has something to contribute. The one other piece I'd be wanting to say, in addition to all this, is we need to have phone trees ready to go now. You need to make sure that all of your church people are on a phone list, and that they are able to talk to their friends, family and neighbours to see if any of them would like to be contacted regularly to make sure they're okay. For us as a church, we're setting a key performance indicator that says we want all of our families to have had somebody connect with them once a week. All of our singles, all of our couples, all of our young people, somebody has had a chat with them once a week just to make sure everyone's okay. And all of our at-risk people, we've had a discussion with to know how regularly they'd like connection with. And for some of them, we will be seeking to have daily phone contact. And so in addition to building these teams, we need to build a telephone team, a team who will be regularly connecting with people. And my hope and prayer is that telephone list that we ring through regularly expands beyond just the normal people you'd see in your church directory, but it becomes a list of people who are being cared for by your church family. And as you start to see this unpacked, you start to see there is a job for everybody. All of us can give a hand, whether it's making calls or giving a hand with some of the specific skills, or just making sure our friends, family and neighbours are okay. This is the task right now. Our job as church leaders is to equip, empower and release our people in preparation for what is coming in the next weeks. If we can do this, I think it will change the face of the church and change the face of our country. We know this is what we're called to do. We are called to love our neighbours. This is how it can work practically, but it's going to require a lot of effort and some new thinking on behalf of church leaders, leadership teams, and our people. And it's going to need a fair bit of directed leadership from church leaders now. But the good news is everybody's listening. Everybody wants to know a way forward. And if you as a church leader can articulate a way forward, if we as church team members can articulate, this is what we can do, this is how we can respond, then I think we'll find our city will be grateful and our country will be grateful, and lives actually will be saved. This is as serious as it is, folks. It is time now for the church to gear up and get ready to face the challenge that's in front of us. God be with us. Help us not take shortcuts. Help us be ready to face the challenge you have laid in front of us.